afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah from Elsevier, and I just wanted to welcome you to our session today on top tips for teaching anatomy with Professor Claire Smith. We're hugely grateful to Professor Smith for giving up her time to run this session for us today, and really lucky to have her as she is very busy. Not only is she head of anatomy at Brighton and Sussex Medical School, but she's also Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor for Education and Innovation. Professor Smith, if you would believe it, has been teaching anatomy for over 20 years, and as a leading innovator in anatomy education, she's led a number of both national and international projects that have increased the student experience, including leading the core syllabus in anatomy, being the first in the UK to scan a cadaver and make 3D prints, and she's developed the use of ultrasound in anatomy education. Professor Smith is also the lead author of Gray's Surface Anatomy and Ultrasound and has published 3 other core textbooks. She also has several teaching awards. So I think you'll agree with me, and it's fair to say that you're in very safe hands today. And I'm really very excited for you to hear what Professor Smith has to say, because I've already had a sneak peek. So it just really leaves me to say thank you in advance to Professor Smith and to hand over so she can start the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for giving up, your half an hour. I hope it's going to be a really valuable half an hour. You've committed to being here in the moment, and I really hope I deliver those top tips for you. What gems of wisdom can you gain from us? So I can't move my slides forward. There we go. No idea. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm just going to get straight on. So as with all teaching sessions, they always start with learning outcomes. So it felt really odd to not start this with what you would hope to get out of it. So I want you to think and identify ways that you might be learning, understand why active learning is important. And then we're going to move on to think about the pitfalls and how to avoid them. And I'm going to give you some new things to help your learning as well. So these are some of my lovely students in our lovely anatomy lab. And these are some of the questions that I get. And this is just to get you in the focus and in that brain sort of mind area. Is it gross anatomy? Well, actually, it is gross anatomy. That's what it's called, but not because it's actually gross as in horrible. Unless you are a little bit squeamish or you're eating your lunch or your dinner, then actually it should be a fascinating journey. Are there any regulations? Yes. I'm not going to go through these because these will vary depending where in the world you are and what those local arrangements are. But I can guarantee you, if you comply to your regulations, you're friendly to your anatomy team and staff, that's going to set you off on the right foot right from the start. How will I learn anatomy? This is a question you need to be asking your anatomy teachers. What does it mean? Am I going to have seminars, lectures, lab sessions? What am I going to be doing? And actually, how am I going to learn as part of that? Now, of course, we're all smiling, but actually, how do I pass exams? So also ask your teachers, actually, what do the exams look like and when do I need to learn things? How do I learn things as part of it? And what else should I do? It's a great question to ask us. We've all got little things in our departments, little opportunities that students can get involved in or help with extra things. So find out about those. I just want to take a minute to say what I'm including when I say anatomy. Anatomy is the structure of our bodies, and the Greek actually means to cut apart. So of course it's going to involve gross anatomy. Gross anatomy is like, switch to my, oh, it's gone over here. The large structures we can see within our body, the muscles, the nerves, the arteries, the veins, etc. We then have osteology, the study of the skeleton. We have histology, what the structures look like under a microscope. We have embryology, and remember that children and babies, neonates, they're not just miniature versions of adults, they have their own unique anatomy. We have surface anatomy. How are we going to understand and apply that knowledge? If a patient comes in with pain in this region, what might be under there? What might be causing it? And it's very highly linked to imaging, whether that be through ultrasound, chest x-rays, MRIs, CTs, etc., and how we view the body. Now, everyone always asks, well, what do I need to know? Do I need to know, full, beautiful grays for students? The question is answered actually by core syllabuses. So if you're in the UK, this is the document for you. You'll be pleased to know 156 learning outcomes by the time you qualify. If you're in the US, there are similar documents for the US and the same across different parts of the world. And if where you are or the course you're studying, there are syllabuses for medicine, dentistry, for pharmacy, for nursing students. And if your course doesn't have one, I guarantee they've probably jumped on to one of the existing ones. This is all freely available, so you can check it out yourself. But remember, this is the time that you qualify or you finish your studies. It's not everything you need to know between now and January. I'm just going to pause for a minute. I want you to be a little bit selfish. Write down what you think you might be doing to learn anatomy. What type of activities? I'll give you one, reading a textbook. Just jot them down for a second. Just whilst you're doing that, you might notice behind me, I do have an alien and an eye. They are part of some of the props for teaching. Okay, do any of them include any of these? Hopefully they do. So some of these haven't changed over years of teaching anatomy, and I can speak to older retired surgeons and they will still say they read textbooks, they drew on colleagues, they drew diagrams, they made lists of things, made notes. Some of those are completely time-honoured, tried and trusted techniques. Some of them have been brought about since the generation of the web, and again, just because they're new, they're still tried and trusted. We know how students learn through watching YouTube, through listening to podcasts, through using augmented reality, virtual reality. Okay, so all of these are just as valid as each other. And we'll just pause on that a little bit later so that you can come back and have a think about things to mix them up. But you might think, oh, I can't be doing all of these things, Claire. I can't fit that all in. And the answer is no, you're not supposed to. Just pick a couple of things to try. So sticking on this really selfish, this is about you as a learner. You've proven that you are an amazing individual and a learner because you are studying wherever you are studying and it involves anatomy in some way, shape and form. But just recognise for a minute, what was your previous experience of learning anatomy? Do you have any? Have you watched someone on telly? Have you got a family relative that might be a nurse or a doctor or a physiotherapist? Maybe, maybe not. Every student, my smiling students here, is unique and brings with them a bit of previous experience. So that's the first thing to recognise and to unpick. Are there any perceptions in there that, someone on the older years has told you it's really awful or something like that, and you're carrying that round with you? So try and just, if it's not helpful, take them out. What we do know about you as individuals is your personality does play out in learning anatomy. And it's not a surprise. Students who score higher on the conscientious domains of personality tend to do better in anatomy learning. And this makes sense because they love detail, they will finish a task. But the biggest part that we've been able to work out is actually spatial ability. how you handle objects in relation to each other, how your brain can move them around, is an inherent ability. The great news is you can train for it. Research, and I've jotted some down there, continually shows we can train people to have better spatial ability and experience and time on task, so practicing matters. If you've had enough of everything anatomy, go and do some spatial ability training that's fun in a different type of way. That will still help your learning. One part of spatial ability, actually there's two really, are really important. The first one is depth perception, and that's called metric spatial ability. The other one is rotation, the ability to rotate objects in your mind. And this is really helpful. Depth perception, if you're dissecting or you're putting catheters in, central lines in, undertaking surgery, you need to know what's above and below something and how far it is. And the rotation, the ability to be able to go, okay, here's a CT image of this, and here's the patient in front of me, and I can compare the two. Now on here, I've written this word learning styles. You might have heard of it. Learning styles has been proven to be a complete myth. I'm spending quite a lot of time kind of debunking it. I need a big red cross through it. You as a learner, selfish learner, remember now, don't fit yourself into a certain pigeonhole or box, okay? You are who you are, you learn through a variety of ways, okay? Doesn't mean you are a certain type of learner. But why are you learning? Well, oh, I forgot to give you the warning of cadaveric images in the picture. So just to say, all cadaveric images I've used have always been taken with consent. You're learning because you've got a purpose to your study. It may be for research, for further understanding of knowledge, or for an application such as medicine, dentistry, nursing, etc. That's really important. Bring into your learning how you're going to be using that information. This is termed situated learning. And a very important thing happens. When you start off, and we'll use the skull in this picture as an example. So you're starting off learning. You're looking at this image up here, and you're going, Claire, I know I'm looking at the orbit. There's some structures here, a little bit whiter, darker. What on earth am I looking at? And then I then say something like, okay, well, so this is the superior oblique muscle. And it goes through a trochlea, and it's supplied by the trochlear nerve, which is the cranial nerve, which is one of the cranial nerves. And it makes the eye go inferiorly and down and out laterally. If a patient walks into a consulting room and there is a problem with the eye and it's in a particular position, that doctor can go straight to, okay, it's a problem with the trochlear nerve. But for us, when we're learning anatomy, you have to go through point A, point B, point C, point D to get to there. Encapsulation is those shortened lines of reasoning. So it's joining up that part of a triangle to make it quick. And that will happen in your brain without you realizing it. This is important because later on, when diagnosing patients, treating patients, your brain starts to use something called illness script formation. But it's not 100% perfect. It's not a flow chart that goes through a computer, because decision making is not always based on evidence. We bring feelings into it, and you should bring feelings into your learning too. So learning is an active process. It involves the cerebral engagement. And research has identified 3 distinct approaches to learning. They're not learning styles because they're plastic, so they can change. They can change from one day to the next, one task to the next. And I've got a little video that takes you through these. So enjoy it. It's only a couple of minutes. that video was created after following over 800 students through medical school and regularly looking at the approach to learning that they were taking using a validated inventory. So I just want you to pause again now and think about those three things: the deep, the strategic, and the surface approaches. What things do you think you can do to help your learning, knowing a little bit about that? Just whilst we pause for a second, Deborah, I don't know if there are a couple of questions here that might be relevant to bring in, or if not, we can carry on.
Okay, I do have one. How can we improve our learning style?
Okay, so this is about, so don't think of it please as learning style. Think of it as how you're going about your learning. And this is perfect timing because actually the next slides talk about the top tips. So it's going to be about being creative and being varied. And I promise we'll come on to that.
I've got one more if we have time. Well, I've actually got two. Will I ever remember everything? That's quite a big question. And
no, you won't.
no. Which book is ideal apart from Grey's Anatomy? Which one would you suggest? Or I guess, you know, maybe you will cover which sorts of
definitely cover textbooks towards the end.
Great.
This is really important. You cannot collect going to grab full Grey's Anatomy. It's not in my room at the moment. It's taken at home.
Too big.
Too big. It is literally. It's that back. You can't cram that all in your brain. Okay, this is why the tips that we're going to go through actually will be really helpful to you, because your brain will overload. So top tip number one is to get creative. You don't have to go as far as our lovely model here that we painted with my colleague Professor Finn for the Body Wells exhibition in London, but you can do creative things. There are a few simple bits, okay? Just wander off screen. Okay, you don't need much. Sometimes just some simple pens that they tend to be sold as children's pens because they can wash off easily, or just simple things like eyeliner. You can draw structures on yourselves. That's the same for body paint as well. Not recommending any particular brand, as cheap as possible is good. You can use Play-Doh and clay and any other form of modelling clay to make things. You can do, like we've got here, a beautiful brain cake. You can use pipe cleaners. Pipe cleaners are amazing for making, this is the lumbosacral plexus. So for twisting the different nerve roots together, adding labels and things on to them, and for helping take something that might be in a textbook, you're kind of going, where's that nerve going, or where's that artery going? Arteries, I use strawberry laces quite a bit. You can map out all of things like the blood supply to the brain or the coronary arteries using that. And sometimes you can get very cheap 3D printed models like this one, as well as the much more expensive skeletons, but you don't need the expensive kit to learn anatomy. Our brains, can only cope with small chunks of information. So read or listen for a very short time and then do something active. You have your own anatomy. Please don't dissect yourself though. So do it safely, and if with colleagues, with consent. So that's where you can do understanding what muscle groups are working. Have you got extra muscles? The palmaris, I haven't got it, the palmaris longus muscle runs down here. And if you do that and put against tension, you can sometimes see the tendon. I haven't got that muscle, so you can't see it, but there are things you can do, and always study that safely and with consent. Top tip 2, interact with the content your teachers provide for you. We make a lecture slide just like this, and this is truly one of my lecture slides. But you're kind of there going, okay, well, she's told us about the thoracic vertebra. But what I want you to be doing is things that actually really help you. So I'd want you to be drawing over it, reinforcing the messages, going, okay, she said a heart-shaped body. Yep, I can really get the heart-shaped body. Costal facets on the transverse processes. Okay, these aren't labelled. You can't label everything on a diagram. So I'm just going to put costal facets on here. Use programs on your computers and devices or notes that actually allow you to do this type of thing for anatomy. The same for the spinous process. It points down inferiorly. Can't see that on there, but I can see it on there. I can do things that help me. I can have this slide and I can talk it back. I can make myself a little recording. I can make myself some notes. Any of those will be really helpful to you. Top tip 3, nailing lab sessions. Lab sessions, some of you may or may not have. They may be more digital labs or virtual labs, but there's always things you can do to get the most out of them. Again, apologies for the forgotten warning. Some animal material here in this picture. Eat before you go in. Okay, start things off. Surgeons, they have a good breakfast before they go and do hours of surgery. Nurses do before they do, long shift works. Look after your body, eat and drink. Drink water. Look at the notes before you go in and actually know what you're doing. Don't turn up kind of going, what are we doing today? Okay, right. So you're wasting that quality time. Have your notes, whether it be, on your iPad or on physical, and go, okay, so today, Professor Smith's asking us to look at a vertebra. I'm just going to check on that. Or I should use this example, the example here of the gallbladder. Oh, this is about recognizing structures. Find things that you can recognize and your brain will help you fill in the rest. So I go, okay, gallbladder here. This must be the liver. I can see some intestines. This must be the mesentery. Therefore, I know this is the stomach. Once you can, don't panic when you've got a specimen or something in front of you. Verbalize out or internally the things you know you can see. And then you've got a starting point to ask someone or to talk through what you can't see. The next bit is these. So many neural pathways come through our hands to our brain. So whether you're learning through drawing things, through palpating, through dissecting, through working on digital apps and things like that, use these. It is proven neuroscience, it will increase your learning. Top tip 3, engage in all stages of the learning. And yes, I do make my students ultrasound each other's eyeballs. They generally enjoy it. There are 3 phases to learning: before, during, and after. Where do you think most of that learning actually occurs? Probably, from our experience, it's actually the before and the after. The bit that we have influence over, the bit where you turn up and we're really excited to see you and want to work with you, is not necessarily the bit where you learn the most. It's probably actually in the after where you're consolidating information. So set up your timetable and your planning to do those 3 stages. The before need only be 5 minutes. What am I doing today? Yes, I know I'm learning the arteries of the brain. Great, I've got a few names. During, exploring them, learning them, and the after, I think I can draw them out now. I think I can list them or I can teach them. And we know students who are engaged, particularly in a deep approach or a strategic approach, engage in those 3 stages. Top tip 4, teach others. It's so powerful and the evidence is overwhelming. I could fit loads on a slide and you'd never be able to read them. It has been repeatedly shown in anatomy that if you teach others, just can be your friend, can be in a setup that your school has helped, it will improve your knowledge, improve your confidence, and it helps someone else. It's a complete win-win situation. And it can save you time as well. Divide things out. Okay, I'll do the muscles of the tongue. you do the nerve supply to the tongue, you do the arterial supply to the tongue, and then we're just going to teach each other, okay? It really will help you. Top tip 5, building your blocks bit by bit. As we've said, and as someone kindly asked, you can't remember it all. The limits of our knowledge, of our short-term memory, even things like the cranial nerves, the 12 cranial nerves. So you can learn the names, and then you can do things called chunking. So using mnemonics and various other things, rhymes and ditties, to help you get those into your mind. This is just an example of one for the cranial nerves. The rest are probably all completely unrepeatable in a public forum. It's really important that you build a framework, and that you build your learning up bit by bit by bit. You won't see it happening. You can only see it in hindsight, but that's important. Rehearsal of knowledge. This is what athletes do. Okay, so go through that several times. Okay, so I know the circle of Willis, the cerebral arterial circle that supplies the brain. I know it's got the 2 vertebral arteries coming in, joining to the basilar, and just keep on building on it, and that will help you. Engage in as many activities for your learning as possible. Give yourself that freedom, and you will get to the encapsulation. What to do next? From those early ones, if you think that you've go, oh, actually, yeah, I'm doing this one and I'm doing that one, great, stick with it. If it gets a bit stale, pick up a few other bits. If you were doing things that were really linked to a strategic approach, that real drive to pass the exams, you may struggle a little bit sometimes. So sometimes do something that might help with a bit further understanding, like teaching it. If you were selecting lots of things that might be linked to a surface approach, so a very short term, try and cram it in, get it out, try and cram it in, get it out, then try and mix that up as well. You need to use short-term memory to build on things, so it is important. And what to do if it goes wrong. Don't panic. You've been very effective learning so far. Have confidence in yourself. Just try a few other things. Talk to others and go and see someone in anatomy. Every year, for the past 20 years plus, I've taught over 1,000 students every year. There isn't a question I haven't heard before, or a problem or something. And it's the same, say all of us anatomists are lovely individuals. We want to help you learn our amazing subject. So, final few thoughts. Anatomy is an amazing journey, and it is going to be inspiring for you, rewarding and totally amazing understanding the human form. But to do that, it can be a bit fragmented. It can feel quite painful, emotionally, difficult, overloading at times. But actually, I know you will succeed. And just before we move on to the end and any questions, colleague, one of you asked about textbooks and things. I think it's really important that you try out a couple of textbooks. Gray's is of course fantastic, but there are other brands, and you might think, actually, I like the pictures in this one. They just work visually better with me or that one. So do try them out. I would recommend Gray's for Students, and I would recommend Gray's Surface Anatomy and Ultrasound. They are staples across the world. A couple of my other books I would also recommend, kind of selfishly, Crash Course Anatomy. This was written by 2 students that I taught, Sam Hall and Johnny Stevens. And they also have done a lot of the research work into near-peer teaching. So they've written this book from the complete perspective of having been through that journey. 30 Seconds Anatomy is going to be far too basic for your studies, but it was an amazing book to write, and is a great book to just flick through. The other book, The Silent Teacher, The Gift of Body Donation. I'm really happy to say that I've spoken to the publisher, that it's not published by Elsevier, and they're really happy to do a special offer on it as part of this talk. So this book is all about the journey of a body donor. It goes through all of my experiences as an individual through my career to date. Lots of things about what goes right and wrong in anatomy, and yeah, is aimed at students first starting. It doesn't cover anatomy content, it covers how we get donors, what happens to them. It is of course based in the UK. Anyway, the offer is, if you would like a copy, it will be the equivalent of 10 English pounds, plus postage and packaging. And the easiest way to facilitate this, because it is available on Amazon and Waterstones, but I can't get them to do those discounts, is just to email me, c.smith@bsms.ac.uk, stating your name, where you would like it shipped to, so the exact details, and I can then send you a PayPal invoice. And once that PayPal request has been paid, then I will drop it in the post. And if you would like a lovely little message in it, with my favourite fountain pen, to you as amazing students, then of course you're very welcome. Over to Deborah for some other information about book offers and questions.
Hi Claire, thank you ever so much. I think well, we've been having lots of comments as well as questions of people saying how useful they found this course and how this session rather, and how you've made them feel that they really can learn anatomy. So that feels really positive.
Very kind of you.
Just to echo what Claire is saying about book discounts, we will or we can send you a link actually in the email that we send you, which will come approximately 6 days after the session, which will include the recording, and we'll send you a link through to get some of the books that Claire has talked about today at a discount. Those are the Elsevier books. I will, Claire, if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple of questions. We do have quite a few. We've got one in particular that I wanted to start with, which is, how should we prepare ourselves mentally when we face the cadaver?
That's great. It is challenging. I remember my first donor way back in the 90s. I don't think that will ever probably leave you. I think that I always think that person wanted to be there, or their relatives wanted that person to be there. So I think do prepare yourself. They do look like a deceased human, because that's what there is. Some schools take things very gently and will have the faces covered, so you can do that in time. Some medical schools let you know the names of the donor. So have a think about what makes you feel comfortable. Definitely eat a good breakfast and have some water before you go in. And talk about your feelings, okay? It's completely fine if you get in there and you're in floods of tears. It's completely fine if you get in there and you're just a little quiet and a little stand back. It's also fine if you get in there and you're like, right, I just want to get on. Be kind to yourself. Don't be too forceful on yourself. And don't worry, we're very used to a whole range of reactions of things. I guess sometimes people say that helping detach helps. So really think, okay, today we're learning the pectoralis major muscle, so I'm just going to focus on that, and that can help them overcome that.
Thanks, Claire. We've got quite a few questions about learning anatomy, some of which I think you've covered as you've gone through the session. But there is one here which says, what are the easiest ways we can relate anatomy with CTs and MRIs?
Great question. I would start thinking about, so you've got to start somewhere on those building blocks. So if you're looking at a CT or an MRI, you've got to actually know what you're looking for. So I would start with a simple thing of, okay, we'll say the heart. So you need to know that there are 4 chambers, the arch of the aorta. You need to have a little bit of basic kind of getting first. So I would get that from these textbooks or from your course notes first. Be confident with that. Then move to a CT or an MRI and just start, being able to then go, okay, so when I'm looking at it this way or that way, this is in this orientation and that way. Some students I've seen will have a CT scan and then will actually try and draw it out so that they can then help them find where things are. And that's an example you can see actually here on the screen in Grays. We've got the ultrasound image and then overlaid it as where the structures that we're looking for are. So you can try doing things like that. The best thing that will help you is just constant practice of it. So if you're learning and you're always learning from one type of source, whether it's complete anatomy, Grays, etc., try and mix it in with different sources, so from cadaveric images or CT scans. Practice, you can do it.
That's great, thanks Claire. I'm conscious of the time, but maybe we could just take one more question if that's okay. There's a lot of questions here about remembering, and again I know that you've covered various different things that students can do, but I think there seems to be a bit of anxiety about remembering. So the question is, remembering the anatomy, the various muscles and nerves involved in the central nervous system, especially the brain, is quite the task to me. Is there a more efficient way to remember the nerves, muscles and junctures of our brain?
Is there a more efficient way? That's really interesting. I think the best efficient way you can do is to use multiple ways, so to try and be creative with that, so to try and draw things out, make flow charts, etc. There is sometimes no shortcuts to learning, but what you can do is make your learning as efficient as possible and really help your brain. If there were magical shortcuts, if there was a pill you could take in the morning and that would deal with the first chapter in Grays, we would have all taken it by now. But I'm really sorry that there isn't. So embrace the journey, embrace the learning, try not to focus on the facts too much. Try and focus on some of the patterns. So if you're learning the feet muscles echo very much the patterns in the hand. The patterns of the nervous system and the flow of information. So maybe try and think about the flow of that information first in that example.
I think that's really, really useful advice, Claire. There are a few questions about neuroanatomy, which obviously is an area for students that causes a little bit of concern. But we're kind of, I think, we're probably going to have to wrap things up now. There are some other questions which, you know, if you don't mind, we can pass on to you and hopefully we can follow up with. As I said, there are a lot of comments here of people just saying how much they've enjoyed the session. Can they have another one? And how useful it's been. And I would like to echo that. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad to see the comments that people, the students on the line have found it really practical and useful. We really do appreciate you giving up your time to do this with us today. So
thank you so much, everyone. It has been a pleasure to share some of these wisdoms with you. I genuinely wish you all the best in your anatomy. I absolutely know you can do it because you've taken the time to engage in this and how you're going to learn, which means you are going to absolutely storm it and nail it. So I wish you all the very best. And I'd be lovely. I feel bad I can't see, you know, your lovely faces and where you are in the world. But thank you.
Many thanks, Claire. Thank you, everyone on the line. Bye-bye.